She spent years away from the world, not by choice, but because of the decisions made by someone who was supposed to protect her. Even in isolation, Melissa never stopped believing that one day she'd be free. And when Thomas, a quiet rancher, showed up and opened that door, everything started to change. Not even Antonia, who controlled everything around her, could see what was coming. This is a story about hope, strength, and a love that bloomed where no one expected. Get ready, because this twist is going to surprise you. Melissa was born on a clear spring morning, beneath a blue sky that seemed to paint promises of a peaceful future. Her cry echoed through the little wooden farmhouse, waking her father, Joseph, who never tired of admiring her. She was everything to him, the light that brightened his days, the reason he kept working hard on the farm. Melissa's mother, Mary, had passed away when the girl was just 2 years old, taken by a sudden fever that stole from Joseph what he loved most. Since then, Joseph had taken on not only the role of father but also mother, doing everything he could to make sure his daughter felt the warmth of love in their home. Every day, before the sun even rose, Joseph was already up, tending to the land, caring for the animals, and preparing breakfast for them. Melissa woke up early, eager to join her father on the farm chores, running barefoot through the fields, feeling the cool grass beneath her small feet. "Come on, Melissa," Joseph called with a smile, holding her hand. "Let's feed the chickens." Melissa smiled and jumped into her father's arms, feeling safe in that strong embrace. The farm was her world, the only one she knew, and there she felt loved and secure. The mornings were filled with laughter, whispered stories, and the sound of birds that accompanied the simple but happy family routine. In the afternoons, when the sun was high, Melissa helped in the garden, picking ripe fruits and handing them to Joseph, who carefully placed them in baskets to sell at the market in the nearby town. Their bond was special, built on trust and affection. Joseph knew exactly what made Melissa laugh and what made her sad. And even though she was so young, she understood her father's effort, seeing him as a true hero. But despite the simplicity, there was an emptiness in Joseph's heart. The absence of Mary left the house too quiet at times. Melissa felt that absence too, and sometimes asked, "Daddy, when is Mommy coming back?" He'd smile sadly, stroking her hair. "Mommy's in heaven, sweetheart. But I'm here, and I'll take care of you." And with that love, he promised she'd never be alone. Years passed, and Melissa grew up under her father's protection, surrounded by the peacefulness of the farm. But an unexpected change was about to turn her life upside down. One gray morning, while Melissa was helping in the kitchen, Joseph arrived with an elegant woman, dressed in expensive clothes and wearing a smile that seemed to hide secrets. "Melissa, this is Antonia," he said, his voice firm but tired. "She's going to be your stepmother." The girl looked at the woman suspiciously as she stepped forward, offering a forced handshake. "Hello, dear," Antonia said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm so happy to be part of the family." Melissa felt a chill. Something about that woman didn't feel right, but she couldn't explain why. The first days were strange. Antonia watched everything with cold eyes, and her voice always carried an order disguised as kindness. Soon, small changes started to happen. The household routine shifted, the rules got stricter, and Antonia took control of what was once simple and light. Melissa, who used to be treated with love, began hearing scoldings and criticisms. Her stepmother demanded silence, obedience, and pushed the girl away from her father. Joseph, though clearly troubled, tried to keep the peace, but the shadow Antonia cast over the house grew darker by the day. Melissa felt lost and sad. The joy of childhood gave way to silent fear, a growing anguish deep in her chest. Time hadn't been kind to Joseph. The worries about the farm, the weight of his age, and the stress from the tension at home were starting to take their toll. One night, Melissa was called to her father's room, awakened by his weak voice. She rushed over, finding him pale and lying down, his eyes watery and his body worn out. "Daddy!" she cried, grabbing his hand. "What happened?" He tried to smile, but the pain was clear. "My little girl," he rasped. "I think I'm sick." Melissa felt a tightness in her chest. Tears welled up, but she tried to be strong. "You're going to get better, Daddy. I promise." Joseph squeezed her hand with effort. "You're my strength," he murmured. "Your mother left too soon. Now, I have to take care of you." Melissa sat beside him, her heart aching. For weeks, he fought the illness, but day by day he seemed weaker. Antonia watched from a distance, showing no sympathy. When Joseph died, Antonia revealed her true colors. With no one to stop her, she took over the farm, the assets, and most of all, Melissa's life. She lied, saying the girl had run away, vanished without a trace, spreading that lie to keep suspicion at bay. But in reality, she locked Melissa inside the barn, a dark, cold space where time seemed to stand still. The girl, once free and happy, was now a prisoner of her stepmother's cruelty. Alone, scared, and confused, Melissa clung to memories of her father and the hope that one day she would be free. Melissa's world shattered the night Joseph closed his eyes for the last time. She didn't cry out loud, didn't scream. She just curled up silently in the corner of the room, holding her father's cold hand as if trying to stop death from taking him away. Antonia refused to allow a funeral. She said there was no need to call a priest or neighbors. Her excuse was simple: Joseph was always a private man. But the truth was she wanted the burial to happen as quickly and quietly as possible. Within 12 hours, Joseph was buried in the most remote part of the property, with no witnesses, no farewell. That same day, Melissa's fate was sealed. Without tears, without explanation, without a single look of sympathy, Antonia dragged her to the barn. She slammed the door open and shoved the young girl inside. "This is your new home," she said coldly. "You ran from your responsibilities when your father died. Now you'll learn what value means." Melissa tried to fight back, tried to argue, but the pain of loss was still too great to resist. "I never ran away," she whispered through tears. "I stayed with him until the end." "Shut up!" Antonia shouted, her eyes flashing with hatred. "No one's going to believe a spoiled orphan like you." The barn door slammed shut with a bang. And so began the exile. Melissa sat for hours on the cold wooden floor, unable to understand what was happening. The pain of losing her father still throbbed in her chest. But now, she felt something new: abandonment. There was no food that first day. No water. The next morning, Antonia cracked the door just enough to shove in a plate with cold scraps, dry pieces of bread and a glass of water. "Eat and work. Or starve. Your choice." Melissa was weak, but was stunned when her stepmother threw a bag on the floor containing old clothes, needles, thread, and worn-out shoes. "You'll sew and shine shoes. Let's see if you're good for anything other than crying." Gradually, the barn turned into a work cell. Melissa sewed clothes for the farmhands, patched torn shirts, hemmed pants, and polished shoes until the leather gleamed. Over time, she learned to live with almost nothing. Antonia brought food once a day. Sometimes not even that. Her clothes were always dirty. There was no mirror, no comb, no soap. She slept on a pile of straw against the wall, listening to rats scurrying between the beams at night. No one in town knew where she was. Antonia spread the story that Melissa ran away right after her father died. "Ungrateful," she'd say bitterly. "Left everything behind and abandoned me." For months, then years, no one came. The farm was isolated, and Melissa, without proof or a voice, had no way to fight back. She aged there inside. Slowly. Her eyes lost their childhood sparkle. Her skin wasn't so fresh anymore, and her hair darkened with dirt and neglect. But inside her, something kept fighting. Melissa had made a little hideout among some old crates, where she kept a piece of wood carved with her father's name, Joseph. She talked to it every day, whispering, "Daddy, I'm still here. I remember you telling me I was strong, that nobody could break me." On rainy nights, she clung to that carved name like it was the only thing left from the outside world. She learned how to survive, counting the days by the slivers of light through the wooden cracks, telling the seasons by the smell of the fields, finding little joys, a ray of sunshine through the cracks, the sound of a bird landing on the roof, the scent of fresh grass after the rain. And despite everything, she never gave up. "One day, someone's gonna open that door," she'd whisper. "And I'm walking right out of it. Free." One afternoon, Melissa lost her patience. She tore up the shirt she was supposed to sew. She wanted to provoke. She wanted her stepmother to look her in the eye, to say something, to at least recognize she was still human. But Antonia just laughed. "Keep that up, honey. Next meal only comes when that pile's done." And slammed the door shut. Melissa cried out of anger and exhaustion. But even then, she swore to herself it wouldn't last forever. You locked me in here, Antonia, but you didn't kill me. As long as I'm alive, I'm not yours. Time passed, and the girl grew into a woman. In the dark, in silence, she celebrated birthdays alone, blew out imaginary candles, looked at herself in a bucket of water to try and remember her own face, made up songs for herself, drew on the wood with pieces of charcoal, and she always spoke to the carved name of her father. I'm not giving up, Daddy. One day, someone's gonna open this door. Someone who will see me. And on that day, the whole world would change. The old pickup truck's engine rumbled low, making its way down the bumpy dirt road leading to the most remote farm in the region. Thomas drove with his left arm resting on the open window, feeling the warm, dusty evening wind whip against his face. His eyes, sharp and watchful, fixed on the wooden gate up ahead, the same gate he'd been visiting for weeks, always with that uneasy feeling that something about that house was wrong. Ever since Antonia started ordering vegetables, eggs, and sacks of flour, Thomas had taken the job for the good pay. But the woman never allowed any chit-chat. She'd tell him to leave everything on the side porch and get out. Always rushed. Always with cold, dry eyes like stone. That afternoon, parking the truck in front of the house, he felt that weight again. He got out slowly, took off his cap, and straightened the collar of his sweaty shirt. He carried 2 baskets filled with veggies and grains and walked to the porch. Before he could knock, Antonia appeared like a shadow. "Leave it there. And go," she said sharply, not even thanking him. Thomas frowned. She was more nervous than usual. Barely looked him in the eye. Holding the door with one hand, like she was keeping someone from getting out. "Is there a problem, Mrs. Antonia?" "No, none. Go on. I've got other things to do." And she slammed the door in his face. Thomas took a deep breath, walked slowly back to the truck, but just before getting in, he heard a faint noise coming from the old barn in the back. He stopped. It was quick, almost unnoticeable. A creak. A thud. He stood still for a few seconds, staring at the forgotten barn with its windows boarded up. Goosebumps rose on his arm. But it wasn't time for confrontation. Not yet. That night, Thomas came back. He left the truck a few yards from the gate and silently walked along the edge of the property, stepping carefully like someone who knows the woods and doesn't want to be heard. Moonlight partly lit the path, casting shadows over the house. He circled around to the back and sneaked up to the barn. His heart pounded. He didn't know exactly what he expected to find, but something inside told him there was someone there. Someone who shouldn't be. He pressed his ear to the wall. Silence. Then, a soft sob. A quiet cry. Thomas stepped back. His chest tightened. He looked at the reinforced door. A chain and padlock sealed the entrance. He stepped away, looked around, then came back with an old crowbar he'd found years ago in his father's workshop. With one firm, sharp strike, he broke the chain. The door creaked, slowly swinging open. And then he saw her. A young woman. Sitting in a corner, curled up, her hair tangled, her face smudged with soot. She wore an old, patched dress, barefoot, her huge eyes wide with terror. When the moonlight flooded the space, she raised her arms, as if she thought he was going to hit her. "Hey, easy," Thomas said, kneeling down slowly. "I'm not gonna hurt you." The young woman was trembling. She tried to speak, but no sound came out. She was weak, pale. Her eyes filled with tears. You're not her, right?" "No. I'm just a farmer. My name's Thomas." "And you?" "Melissa," she stammered. He swallowed hard. The name Antonia had never mentioned. The name she said had run away years ago. "Let's get you out of here, Melissa. I'm gonna get you out of this darkness." She hesitated. The fear was written all over her soul. But there was something in Thomas's voice, a calm strength, a kindness she hadn't heard in years. Melissa struggled to her feet, her legs shaking. And for the first time in 18 years, she took her first steps out of captivity. Thomas held her gently. She rested her head against his chest, like searching for shelter. Without a word, he wrapped an arm around her and hurried to the truck. Before leaving, he glanced back at the house one last time. Antonia's shadow wasn't visible, but he knew that woman would soon feel the weight of justice. The truck pulled away quietly, carrying not just a freed young woman, but a story ready to begin again. Melissa curled up in the passenger seat, hugging her knees, her body dirty, hair tangled, eyes wet. But what hurt most wasn't outside. It was inside. The whole way, she didn't stop crying. At first silent, trying to hold back tears. Then sobbing, like someone wounded who never knew what comfort felt like. Thomas, his face serious and hands steady on the wheel, said nothing, not because he didn't want to, but out of respect for what she was feeling. He knew those tears were more than pain. They were freedom. When they got to his farm, a modest wooden house in the middle of the fields, Thomas parked the truck and got out, walking around to open the door for her. "Come on in. You're safe here," he said, voice steady and warm. Melissa hesitated a moment. This was the first home she'd been inside since, how many years? Hard to remember. She stepped in slowly, startled by every new sound, every new smell. Thomas pointed to a simple, tidy room. "This room's yours, as long as you need. There's a clean towel in there. Go take a hot shower, then come to the kitchen. I'll fix you a proper meal." She nodded shyly, her throat dry from all the crying. Entered the bathroom like she was stepping into a dream. That hot water pouring over her body felt almost unreal. It had been so long since she'd felt real warmth, seen herself in a mirror, felt human. When Melissa came out, wearing a shirt Thomas had left on the bed, the smell of soup filled the whole house. It smelled like home, like food made with care. She moved toward the table, and he set the plate in front of her. "Sit down. Eat slow. It's still hot." She sat, her hands shaking as she picked up the spoon and took the first bite. Closed her eyes. It was simple, vegetable broth, some shredded chicken, chunks of potato, but to her, it was a feast. The taste of freedom. Thomas sat across from her, watching silently. She ate slowly, like she wanted to savor every second. After a few bites, she looked up and stared at him. Why did you do this?" she asked, voice cracking. "You don't even know me." Thomas took a deep breath. His eyes held pain, experience, but also tenderness. "Because nobody should live in the dark that long, Melissa. No one deserves to be treated like an animal. And because I saw it in your eyes. You haven't given up yet. That's reason enough." She looked at that rough, quiet man with calloused hands and sad eyes, feeling a strange pang in her chest. Something she couldn't name, but felt stronger than fear. He added, "We'll talk more tomorrow. You need to rest. You're home now." Melissa let out a sigh, as if releasing years of tension. It wasn't the end of the pain, but maybe the start of something new. Melissa woke up to the smell of fresh bread. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming. The mattress was soft, the pillow smelled like lavender. There was a warm blanket over her. Sunlight streamed through the window. Nothing reminded her of the damp, dark barn that had been her prison for years. She sat up slowly, as if any sudden move might shatter everything. Her feet touched the wooden floor. It was smooth, clean, welcoming. There were folded clothes on a chair. A simple light blue dress. She hesitated before touching it, as if she couldn't believe it was really hers. But she put it on. The soft fabric gently hugged her body. In the kitchen, Thomas heard her footsteps. She appeared in the doorway, shy. "Good morning," she said, her voice rough. He gave a sideways smile. A genuine smile, the kind that says more than 1,000 words. "Morning, miss. Sit down. I made some coffee." She came closer, her eyes darting around like she was waiting for someone to yell at her any second. Thomas pulled out a chair. She sat down, hunched over, not knowing what to do with her hands. "There's bread, cheese, and coffee with milk. Help yourself, all right? Nobody's gonna boss you around here. I just want you to eat well. You're home now." She blinked. Home. It was the first time she'd heard that in 18 years. "Thank you, sir." "Thomas," he corrected gently. "Call me Thomas." She nodded, trying to smile, but her face seemed to have forgotten how. "Melissa. That's a pretty name." She lowered her head, shy. Then she ate. On the other side of town, Antonia, the stepmother, opened the barn door carrying a bundle of dirty clothes. It was routine. She tossed old rags for the girl to sew or wash. She was ready to yell, threaten, and boss her around. But the silence inside made her stop. "Melissa," she called, already irritated. "Nothing." She took a few steps forward, her heart pounding when she saw the back gate wide open, the latch broken. She ran over, and then saw the marks on the dirt floor. Tire tracks. 2 footprints. Signs of escape. "Damn it!" she screamed, throwing the clothes on the ground. Furious, she ran inside the house, grabbed the phone, and started calling old contacts. Dangerous men, stained by their past, and by their intentions. People who owed her favors. "I want her back. Alive. But if she opens her mouth, you know what to do." Meanwhile, the days after her escape were like a silent rebirth for Melissa. Still scared, still marked on her wrists and in her soul, but free. Every sunrise in Thomas's simple home felt like a small victory. He never pushed her. Always calm-voiced, light-footed, and with gentle gestures, Thomas respected her pace. He gave her space but never disappeared. He was there, present, protective, attentive. On the first morning, she woke up before the sun. Startled, thinking it had all been a dream. But when she looked around and saw the clean wooden ceiling, the bed with real sheets, and the open window bringing in the smell of wet earth, she understood she was free. And she cried. Again. Silently. Thomas had left a note on the table. "Good morning, Melissa. I'm in the garden. Just call if you need anything. Coffee's on the stove." She, who barely knew what freedom was, didn't expect such kindness. She walked around the house with timid steps, eyes still wide like someone afraid of being punished just for breathing. But it was all real. In the kitchen, there was homemade bread, some coffee, and warm milk. She sat down, ate slowly, and smiled. Alone, but she smiled. Stepping out the back door, she saw Thomas kneeling in the dirt, tending the lettuce plants. He smiled when he saw her but said nothing. Just pointed to a pair of gloves left on the shed bench. She got the hint. Without being asked, Melissa started helping. And that's how it went, every day. She loved the garden. She said it was therapeutic to work the soil. And it was. There among the green leaves, the damp earth between her fingers, the hum of bees, and the smell of ripe tomatoes, she felt her soul breathe. Like every seedling she planted was a piece of herself coming back to life. Thomas sold the vegetables and greens at markets in neighboring villages. The harvest fed families and restaurants around. It was his livelihood, and now, hers too. He liked watching Melissa from afar, seeing her connect with a world she'd never known. It was like watching a flower that had wilted for too long finally starting to bloom. But while peace was rebuilding on that patch of land, the threat grew elsewhere. Meanwhile, Thomas kept to his routine carefully. He woke early, harvested, cleaned, and packed crates of veggies to sell at the market. Melissa helped, and now and then, she even smiled for real. But that morning, when he parked his truck near the São Miguel village market, something caught his eye. Across the square, by an abandoned cart, stood Antonia. Thomas froze. Watched carefully. But what he saw next put him on high alert. She wasn't alone. Next to her were 3 men who clearly didn't belong in that quiet village. 2 had tattooed arms, tough and wary expressions. The third, taller, wore a brown hat that partly hid a deep scar cutting across his chin. His eyes scanned the place coldly. Antonia gestured angrily, impatiently. In her hands, she held a sheet, looked like an old photo. She showed it to the men, pointed in different directions, like describing prey. Thomas ducked behind a stall, heart pounding. He saw the men nod, then start to circle slowly among the market booths like dogs sniffing a trail. Blood boiled in his veins. This wasn't just a visit. This was a hunt. Antonia was after Melissa. And now she had dangerous men with her. Thomas knew what he had to do. That girl wasn't just a guest. She was someone who trusted him, who had looked into his eyes and asked, voice cracking, "Why did you save me?" He hadn't answered everything he felt then. But now, he needed to do more than answer. He needed to protect. Because Melissa had been hurt too much. And if Antonia found her again, Thomas knew there wouldn't be a second chance. It was time to stop being just the quiet man at the market. It was time to be someone's shield. The garden girl was stronger than she looked. But now, Thomas would be the wall between her and the hell waiting outside. Thomas came back from the market with his heart racing. The truck bounced along the dirt road, kicking up dust beneath the red-tinged evening sky. His fingers were stiff on the wheel, and the image of Antonia with those men wouldn't leave his mind. He knew what it meant. The quiet days on the farm were numbered. When he arrived, he saw Melissa sitting near the porch with a small basket of freshly picked carrots beside her. The light dress he'd given her, old but clean and simple, fluttered in the breeze. She stood as soon as she saw him, wiping her hands on the apron with that gentle way he was starting to recognize as her own. "Hey, Thomas," she said, a shy smile lighting up her eyes at his arrival. "How was the market?" He forced a smile, trying to hide the tension eating away inside him. He got out of the truck and slammed the door harder than needed. Melissa frowned, noticing. "Everything's fine," he said, avoiding her eyes. "Just a busy day, that's all." "Thomas," she took a step closer. "Something's wrong. You look pale." He ran a hand through his hair, looking away. "It's nothing, Melissa." "Really? Please," she insisted, voice firmer now. "Don't lie to me. I've been fooled for way too long. I trust you. Just tell me what's going on." Her honesty caught him off guard. Thomas took a deep breath, paused for a moment, then walked over to the porch steps and sat down. He stared at the worn wooden floor before finally speaking. "I saw Antonia today. At the market." Melissa went pale. "What?" "She wasn't alone," he continued. "She was with 3 men. Dangerous guys. Not from around here. One of them looked like the leader, had a scar on his face. She showed them something, looked like an old photo, probably of you. Then they started walking around the market like they were looking for you." Melissa swayed a bit, steadying herself against the door frame. She sent them after me?" Thomas nodded slowly. "I'm almost sure of it. And if that's true, she won't stop until she finds you. I need to figure something out. Fast." She stayed silent for a few seconds, chest rising and falling with shaky breaths. Then she walked over and sat beside him, eyes lost on the road. "I knew she wouldn't leave me alone," she whispered. "She doesn't just want to lock me up again. She wants to erase me from my father's story, like I never existed." Thomas looked at her gently, wanted to reach for her hand, to say everything would be okay, but he knew words wouldn't be enough. "You're not going back to that barn," he said firmly. "I swear." She turned to him. Her eyes, despite the fear, held a new spark. "Why are you doing this for me, Thomas? Why risk so much?" He took a moment before answering, then said, almost in a murmur, "Because nobody deserves to live locked up in the dark. And because, ever since I saw you in that barn, I can't stop thinking about protecting you. Even if I don't fully understand what that means yet, that's how I feel." Melissa looked away, moved. The silence between them filled only by crickets and the wind in the branches. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me when no one else did." Thomas nodded. And there, under the sunset and the looming threat, something between them began to bloom, not just protection, but something deeper, more delicate. For the first time in a long while, Melissa felt maybe, just maybe, she was safe, even if the world outside was set against it. The following week, while Thomas was setting up his stall for another delivery, he heard footsteps behind him. It was Antonia. A cynical smile on her lips, a fake polite expression. The market buzzed in the late morning heat. Thomas arranged his veggies with rough movements, face shut tight, eyes distant. He already had a bad feeling, and it didn't take long. Antonia's heels hit the dusty ground unmistakably. She approached like a sleek snake, smiling with false sweetness, flanked by 2 men with hard looks. "Good morning, Thomas," she drawled, syrupy. "What a nice variety of vegetables you've got today. Think you could set some aside for me?" He didn't even lift his head right away. Finished organizing a box of potatoes, grabbed a dirty rag and wiped his hands, acting like she wasn't there. Only then did he reply, coldly, "I'm not doing deliveries anymore." She let out an uneasy chuckle. "Oh, come on. You're gonna deny me this little favor." Thomas finally looked up, meeting her gaze. His eyes were stone. He kept fiddling with the crates, impassive. His silence said it all. But he knew he couldn't say no. If he did, she'd get suspicious. Might even send someone to snoop around. And Melissa wasn't ready to be found yet. He took a deep breath. When he spoke, his voice was dry, firm, without a hint of kindness. "I'll stop by late this afternoon." Antonia raised an eyebrow, surprised by the answer but pleased. One of those smiles that say she thinks she's won. "Great. I'll be waiting." He wanted to spit on the ground, turn his back, and swear he'd never set foot in that place again. But he couldn't. Melissa was at stake. And he cared too much about that girl with scared eyes to risk losing her now. Later that day, Thomas was having lunch with Melissa when he mentioned the delivery. "You're not going," she said immediately, turning pale. "She's going to do something. I can feel it. If I don't go, she'll come here. And that's my biggest fear." Melissa clenched her fists. "Promise me you'll come back." He looked at her. The young woman's eyes begged for safety, for someone who wouldn't disappear like all the others in her life. "I'll come back. I promise." The sun was setting when Thomas pulled up outside Antonia's house. He carried the boxes of vegetables up to the porch, and before he could knock, the door swung open by itself. "Glad you came," Antonia said with a slick tone. "Come in. You can put everything in the kitchen." Thomas stepped inside cautiously. The air inside was thick, tense. As he arranged the vegetables on the table, she crept up behind him. "You know, Thomas, you're a handsome man. Seriously. I never thought you'd want to be a hero. Especially not for an ungrateful girl like her." He turned slowly, eyes cold. "I don't know what you're talking about." Antonia smiled. "Oh, you know exactly. You hid her. Did you really think you could fool me? Don't touch her. Ever again." She raised her eyebrows, surprised by his firmness. "Oh, feeling brave now, are we?" But before Thomas could react, one of her henchmen appeared from the hallway. A sharp blow to the head. The pain hit like lightning. Everything went black. Hours passed. Melissa was setting the table with distracted movements. Time seemed to stand still. The sky was already dark, painted in deep blue, warning of a storm. Thomas never took this long. Never. She tried to keep busy, washing dishes, watering the garden, staring at the stars. But the unease inside her grew like distant thunder before a storm. The gut feeling was strong. Thomas was in trouble. She grabbed the flashlight with trembling hands, put on her boots, left silently, moving quickly along the dirt paths. The night cold bit her face, but the fear was colder. She reached the house where Antonia lived. From a distance, she spotted Thomas's truck parked outside. Her heart pounded. Tears welled up. She crept closer, hiding behind tall bushes. Her chest heaved. Suddenly, muffled voices came from the back barn. She slipped through the shadows, looking for a crack in the wooden wall. When she found one, what she saw froze her blood. Thomas was there, tied up, shirt torn, blood dried, dripping from his forehead. And standing before him, Antonia. She held a glass of wine, wearing a twisted, cruel smile. "You really thought you could save her," she hissed. "She's coming back to me, even if it's in pieces." Rage rose like fire in Melissa's throat. Her eyes burned. Her hands shook. She wasn't running. She was going to face her past. Face the monster. She looked around and spotted a heavy branch on the ground. She grabbed it, took a deep breath, creeped up quietly to the barn's back door. Inside, one of the henchmen was turned away, laughing. She moved like a cat, silent and deadly. With a sharp, precise strike, the man dropped to the floor, stunned. The second henchman spun around to attack, but Melissa slammed her foot hard into his shin. He stumbled, off balance, and she landed a solid hit on the back of his neck. She ran over to Thomas, who lifted his eyes, surprised. "Melissa?" he murmured, as if he couldn't believe it. "I came to get you out of here." Without hesitation, she grabbed a knife left on a barrel and started cutting the ropes around his hands, trembling and breathless. Then, the third henchman appeared behind them. "Watch out!" Thomas shouted. Melissa twisted her body and on instinct, slashed the man's arm, making him pull back in pain. She rushed to Thomas, who looked up at her, still dazed from the blow. "Melissa?" he repeated in disbelief. "I came to get you out of here." She grabbed the knife from the barrel and hurriedly began cutting his bindings, shaking and panting. Suddenly, a voice sliced through the air, venomous as a snake bite. "Well, what a lovely surprise." Melissa froze. Her fingers still clutching the knife, she turned slowly. At the doorway stood Antonia, arms crossed, a crooked smile on her lips, eyes flashing. The spoiled little brat decided to play the hero. How touching. She advanced slowly. "You, Melissa, of all people. The ungrateful daughter. I gave you shelter, food, and this is how you repay me. Running away like a rat. You locked me up like an animal." Melissa shouted, jumping up, knife still in hand. "This isn't home. It's a prison." Antonia suddenly lunged forward with a quick, brutal move, scratching Melissa's cheek with her nails, leaving a red, hot, bleeding scratch. Melissa tried to back away, but Antonia gave her no chance. In a wild surge, she grabbed Melissa's arm and slammed her to the ground hard. "You insolent brat!" Antonia yelled, trying to overpower her. The two rolled on the barn floor, a desperate fight between one wanting control and the other fighting for survival. Exhausted and weak, Melissa tried to shield herself from the blows. The sting from the scratch on her face burned, but the fear inside her burned even more fiercely. While they struggled, Thomas, tied to a chair, watched helplessly, until a flicker of strength pushed him to move. With superhuman effort, he managed to tug at the ropes binding him. Sweat dripped down his forehead, heart racing. When Antonia raised her arm to land a final blow on Melissa, Thomas broke free completely. With a sudden burst, he grabbed Antonia's arm, blocking the strike. "Enough!" Thomas roared, firm and determined. "Don't you dare touch her again." Antonia tried to break free, to fight back, but Thomas was fully free now. With renewed strength, he pinned her down, holding her arms tight against her body. "You're finished, Antonia. You won't hurt anyone anymore." His voice thundered with authority. Still feeling the burn of the scratch, Melissa slowly got up and grabbed some sturdy ropes lying nearby. Carefully but firmly, she tied Antonia's hands behind her back, fastening her to a wooden post. "You won't be running away," Thomas warned, breathing deeply. The henchmen, realizing the tide had turned, hurriedly fled through the back of the farm, their steps quick and voices whispering threats. They knew it wasn't the time to mess with Thomas. Melissa looked at Thomas, eyes shining with relief and determination. "We need to report this. The law will do what you couldn't." "Yes," Thomas agreed, looking at the tied-up stepmother. "Now is the time." Without wasting a second, they climbed into Thomas's old pickup truck. The engine roared, and they drove off, leaving behind the farm where so much pain had been lived. On the way, Melissa gripped the wheel tight while Thomas grabbed his phone and called the police. "I want to file a report," he said, voice steady. As he spoke, Melissa glanced back at the road they had fled, feeling a weight lift off her chest. The darkness of the night was giving way to the promise of a new dawn. It was the start of justice and freedom. After that confrontation, which felt like the end but was only the beginning, everything changed in Melissa's life. Antonia, the cruel stepmother, was taken under police escort, imprisoned by the invisible and real chain she had kept for so many years. There was no more room for lies or silence. The truth prevailed, along with the freedom Melissa had fought so hard to find. The old house, its walls marked by memories of pain and suffering, was sold. Melissa didn't want to carry that weight. She chose to turn the past to dust and build a new life far away. With the money from the sale, she and Thomas started fresh, a simple life but full of meaning. On his farm, they worked the land together, growing not just vegetables and greens, but hope and dreams. Melissa found peace in the rhythms of the countryside, the smell of wet earth, birdsong at dawn, the soft touch of leaves. There, beside Thomas, she relearned how to live, smile, and trust. And Thomas, the quiet man who had kicked down the barn door and freed her, became more than a savior. He was her friend, her safe harbor, her love. Time healed wounds, and love became their shelter. Months later, the sun was starting to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, when Thomas led Melissa to a small clearing near the garden, where the fresh scent of plants blended with the peaceful quiet of the countryside. He held something in his hands, a simple wooden box, small but packed with meaning. Melissa looked at him, her eyes shining with curiosity and affection. Thomas took a deep breath, his heart pounding, and knelt down before her. "Melissa," he began, his voice low but full of feeling, "from the moment I found you, I knew my life would never be the same. You've taught me what hope is, what courage is, and what real love means." He opened the little box, revealing a simple but beautiful ring that caught the evening light and sparkled. "Will you marry me? Will you be my partner, my companion, my life?" Tears welled up in Melissa's eyes, her smile lighting up her face. "Yes, Thomas. I want to be yours, forever." He smiled, stood up slowly, and pulled her into a tight embrace that said everything words couldn't. Then he leaned in and kissed her gently, a sweet kiss full of promises, of a love that conquered the past and embraced the future. What's behind them was history. What mattered was what lay ahead. Justice always comes, and true love wins.